You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on BQN and the Fandom Podcast Network. I'm your host, Amy, and with me today are Mark and Kelvin. Hello, Mark.
Amy, welcome back to the pod.
Oh, thank you. I had a lovely trip visiting my brother in DC area, so it was nice to be with family, and Aunt Amy got to come out and play.
Yay.
Yay. And Kelvin, how are you doing?
I'm really well, thank you, Amy. It's lovely to have you back. It's been a few weeks since we've been together.
Yeah. So we, Kelvin, are going to be seeing each other in person next week. Very excited.
I know.
You get the transporter working?
I did. I got the
Nice.
luxury transporter working. I booked a flight over and it's the business class. So I'm going to be all stretched out in my own little cabin.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
I found the price and I just couldn't pass it up.
I have never flown business class or first class or anything beyond economy plus in my life. So seeing you do this, and even Davey, when he came to visit a few months back, he was business class too.
Yes.
It's like you get a tablecloth and everything when they serve you food. It's so fancy.
I'm very looking forward to this. I've waited my whole life.
Oh, well, you do realize once you land, it's all downhill from then because you're going to be staying with me for a week. There's no business class service there.
Oh, now I have tasted your cooking and it's worth it.
No Leola roots.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even look to see if we have feedback.
The whole internet erupted after our last episode, actually, with a resounding "You guys rock." So I think that should be the
Okay.
feedback.
Very good.
Even though we've put nothing in the notes, I'm sure Matt Harker gave some lovely feedback on the show, like he does usually. So I can't remember what he said specifically, so it's not really much point referencing it, but I would just like to say thank you, Matt. It's great that you listen.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. And Vera Bible, she always listens. So shout out to Vera. Thanks, Vera.
Shout out to everyone.
All the regular crew.
Yes.
This is the bridge. All hands to emergency escape pods.
Escape pod. All right, guys. So this is this segment where we escape from our regular discussion for a moment to discuss the latest episode of Star Trek that dropped. And this week we're going to discuss the Strange New Worlds episode Among the Lotus Eaters, which evidently the title comes from Shakespeare, from what I've been told, about some people that live on an island and eat these flowers. I don't think it has to do with forgetfulness, but it has to do with lethargy. So they eat the flowers and then they just don't do anything all day. So it's essentially like getting high. So the producers took creative liberty with that one for this episode. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah. So this was a very interesting episode. I enjoyed it. I'm still getting used to how they're pairing the characters together. Like, I found it very interesting to have Spock and Ortegas working together and seeing their dynamic and how Ortegas is interacting with Spock. And it's like, Spock, just learn to when to stop talking, I really enjoyed getting a perspective from, again, Erica Ortegas. She is amazing. I love Melissa Navia. She's truly, I'm just captivated by her. Every time she's on screen, my eyes are drawn to her. So I really like this episode. What about you, Kelvin?
Okay. I have opinions about this episode, and Mark, I'm blaming you. You jinxed it last week. What did you say last week when you thought I was going to arrive saying, finally, this is the episode I didn't enjoy. And I corrected you, saying, no, it was great.
no.
Unfortunately,
Oh
this
no.
week is the episode that I didn't particularly enjoy. And I feel sorry for Strange New World because it's just been building. Episode 1 was great. Episode 2 was better. Episode 3 was even better. Episode 4, for me, was a miss for several reasons.
Blasphemy.
I will say what I liked about the episode. I loved the Rigel 7 aspect and the reference to the cage and the beautiful use of that AI wall to recreate that really famous picture. But the story was just a bit crap, wasn't it? It didn't really do anything. And that is what I said last week about it was an episode, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. That was not an Ortegas episode. That's what we were billed for. That's what we were. If that was an Ortegas episode, then yesterday's Enterprise is a Troy episode. And for those of you who don't know, Troy has no dialogue in that episode. She just sits there on the bridge. So I'm not happy that this was billed as her episode. I think she was shortchanged and done dirty. And yeah, I didn't like that one-dimensional, angry yeoman on the planet. What's his problem? Get over it.
He's been stuck on the planet and his mind's gotten warped because of the radiation.
He's protected. He's in the lead box. He's living like a king.
Well, now
he should be grateful.
Now he is. And I love that the yeoman, it was the yeoman that was referenced in the cage when he said, "Oh, I lost my yeoman in the cage." It was that guy.
Yeah.
Was it Jason? Might have been Jason.
Zach.
Yeah, something like that. But oh man, Kelvin.
Not for me. What I will say, there was a bit of representation in this episode medically. So I suffer really badly with tinnitus, have done for years, and I put it down to years of working in hospitality in loud nightclubs and everything. So that kind of the ringing in your ears, that noise, I hear that exact same noise constantly at varying volumes depending on how bad it is, but it's like a constant companion. So for them to be referencing, I think it's tinnitus and things like that, I felt very seen. But fortunately, no memory loss yet, so we're all very safe. My quiz performance is safe. I've not lost my memory.
So, Mark, you liked the episode?
Well, yeah. For all of the reasons that Calvin mentioned, and then some. Yeah, I mean, I low stakes. Yeah, I mean, but it's it's in that it's episodic TV. It's supposed to be like a one-off episode, and the strings that they pulled, they're continuing to pull from the cage. Like, I mean, I didn't think there was any more to mind from that episode, but then they gave us this, and I was like, well, first of all, when you see the trailer for this season and they showed the quick clips of this episode, I immediately knew it was going to be Rigel 7. I mean, when the people showed up in the furry costumes with the helmets and stuff, I was like, oh, that's Rigel 7. So it's very iconic. The purple sky, the castle, the whole thing. And it gives it a little bit more stakes. So when you watch the cage, you understand it, like, okay, like I get that there's these warlike people there. I get that there's like this castle thing. I don't know. It all kind of, I don't know. It makes it, it elevates it. Again, here's another example of them elevating something from TOS, elevating something from the cage, and making it somehow more important. So I love that about it. What an interesting concept that hasn't been seen before in Star Trek, where you have all of our heroes that typically are the ones that sort of, outsmart whatever is happening and use their brains to get out of the situation. being thrown a curveball where they can't really use their brains. They're forgetting everything. So it's muscle memory that they have to use and have to go off from. It has to be like the core of their being, sort of their innate humanness, to get them out of this situation. And that was a real cool spin that, again, I don't think we've seen. So that was cool after, 56 years of
We
Trek.
have seen that before. It's exactly the same as Conundrum in TNG. If you remember, none of them could remember their identity, but Ensign Ro could remember how to pilot the ship.
Oh, that's true.
It's exactly the same selective memory wipe. It may have been more fun if you had the romance like you had with Ensign Ro. Cover your ears, Amy. I know you hate this romance. The Ensign Ro and Commander Riker. Maybe if La'an and Dr. Mbenga got a bit jiggy on the planet, that might have injected a little bit of fun in the episode.
I'm glad they didn't go that route. I don't know.
La'an had a romance last week. She can't have it all the time.
That's right.
I don't remember seeing a male yeoman either, because they don't really have yeoman anymore. And in the original series, it was always a female, I believe, that was a yeoman.
What we did see in this episode, because when I think of yeoman, I think of obviously Janice Rand in the Scant. We saw a man in the in the Strange New World Una Scant in this episode. It was a guy in a blue science Scant in the corridor when everyone was losing their minds.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, we love a Scant.
Yes, we do.
But I actually, I don't know. So I've, as you guys know, like we're going to talk about it. Well, our listeners don't know, but we are going to talk about at some point the Ad Astra per Aspera episode of Strange New Worlds coming up, for a new series that we're going to do for Courtroom. But anyway, that episode I've seen a bunch of times, and I love it for a lot of different levels. But it's not exactly the I don't know, like the space romp kind of fun adventure one-off episodes that this one is, and it's more thought-provoking. And so I can see myself going more to this episode, like on rewatches, because it's, I don't know, just fun one-off action adventure-y. I love to see the way they got themselves out of it. I don't know. For me, this is definitely one of my faves. It's a good episode, in my opinion.
So
Sorry, I didn't like it,
talking
Calvin.
about the relationship romance, how are you feeling with Captain Pike and Captain Battelle? Like, that sort of was not a good thing for me. Like when he had that totem, that little medallion that she gave him, and he's remembering, oh, it was a gift. It was, given to me by someone important. Like, he's remembering this, and like that's his motivation to get through. I'm sorry. It should have been his crew. That's where his love is, for his ship. And this Captain Battelle, for some reason, it's not working with me. It's like Ro and Riker. It just doesn't work for me.
Even the best command crew often lead with the brain in their trousers, Amy.
I know, but I don't like her for him, unlike Una.
Well, I haven't, since the first episode, really liked her. I don't know. This episode, though, I found myself moving a little bit. I was like, oh, okay, I can kind of see it. But this is the first time that I see it, because I haven't been on board with her. And I'm not 100% on board now either.
Okay.
But I liked her more in this one.
Yeah.
So she's growing on me.
Okay.
My problem with the Captain Battelle and Captain Pike relationship is I don't buy her as a captain. She doesn't seem very captain-like.
Maybe that's
so
what it is.
If she was more of a junior officer, I don't have a problem with the relationship, and I like the way Una called out Pike, saying, "Oh, it's getting serious. You're backing away." So deadpan. Oh, here we are again. You've done this before. I love that relationship of such a close colleague and friend. But with Captain Patel, I don't know, she just doesn't seem very commanding. She doesn't have that oomph that all the strong women of Star Trek have. And I always think I'm looking for something more in her character that we see in abundance in all the other favorites.
She's less inspiring,
Yeah.
I feel like.
She just seems a bit whiny.
She's a little by the book, a
Mm-hmm.
little straight-laced. He's a little freewheeling. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's why they balance each other out.
Yeah, maybe she should drink that glass of wine he keeps offering her. Then she'd be
Right.
happy. Yeah, she's always turning it away.
She should have some of Raffi's snakeweed. I think that's what she should have.
Yeah. Disclaimer: don't drug your girlfriends, people. It's not good and it's not clever.
Well, on that note, speaking of altered states of mind, that's a great segue into this week's topic, which is going to be Enterprise's Twilight, which is season 3, episode 8. For alternate realities, we have previously covered Prodigy, rest in peace, Ghost in the Machine, and so now this is only the second one. So I'm excited to dive into it with you guys.
Yeah. Do you want to continue and give us a summary of what Twilight is about for our listeners?
All right, so I'm going to do my best to get through a summary of this one. It's a pivotal moment in the search for the Xindi weapon. And Captain Archer wakes up and there's a battle happening. And he ends up at some point in the battle saving T'Pol. And he himself gets injured, wakes up in the sick bay, and a lot of time has passed and he doesn't realize it. And come to find out, he has these microorganisms that they exist outside of regular space-time, and they are growing inside of his brain. And so he cannot formulate new memories. And so T'Pol, out of essentially guilt, dedicates herself to taking care of him through the years. What ends up happening to the rest of the crew? Well, they're unable to stop the Xindi from blowing up Earth. And the Xindi goes off and they blow up all the other planets where there are Earth settlements. And humanity is down to about 6,000 people. So in the meantime, Phlox is still around and he is searching for a cure on Denobula. And what ends up happening is he discovers, with help from his Denobulan, other scientists, that there is a way to cure the disease or the condition. And he heads back to the settlement, which is Ceti Alpha 6. Correct? 5? Ceti Alpha 5 to treat Archer. And when that happens, the Xindi have been on the lookout for Phlox. And they send a team of raiders to kill him, to kill Archer, to find the settlement of humans. It's all been an elaborate sort of trap. And, while they're in the middle of treating Archer, the attack begins. And the ship almost is destroyed, but Archer and T'Pol are able to get to engineering to do the last little bit of treatments. But to do that, the whole ship has to explode. So the Enterprise, spoiler alert, explodes. And Archer is able to be cured, which means that the memories, going back all the way to the very beginning where he was first infected, are now changed. So that he now has his memory back. So it completely rewrites all of the history that has happened throughout that episode. And we're back to the very beginning of the episode where, he got injured, but he just ended up with a mild concussion. So that's essentially it. I skipped over a bunch of stuff, but...
No, you didn't. My gosh.
I tried.
Very well done.
Thank you.
Okay, you guys, this just is very odd timing that we are talking about Twilight, right? We just had a memory episode with Strange New Worlds in Among the Lotus Eaters, and now we're watching this. And no joke, on my flight from DC to Las Vegas, I just randomly picked 50 First Dates.
Lord.
So I have been watching episodes and movies all about forgetting and this reset. And so I was watching Twilight. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore all over again.
Aw.
I love it when we get these coincidences. And we had the same last week as well, because we had a time travel Strange New Worlds and a time travel All Good
That's
Things
right.
episode about Deep Space Nine. So we've done it very coincidentally 2 weeks on the trot.
Well, also last week, and this is not planned, listeners, but we covered Little Green Men about the Roswell incident. And then over on History with the Szilagys, they talked about the Roswell incident, which
Yeah.
we did not talk to Jason and Chrissy at all. They just sort of did it on their own, and it just lined up with our episode. So
Yeah.
What's
definitely
going
check
on
that out.
here?
It was a good episode.
Yeah. Are we on the holodeck? The computer and program?
Yeah. It's a little too eerie. Kelvin.
Can I point out as well with this kind of alternate reality that we're discussing today? I've been doing some reading over the week. So just to further a thought that I mentioned last week. So in last week's Strange New Worlds, they mentioned about pretty much the moving of when the eugenics war is. And I said, I don't really understand, because we've got World War III and we've got the eugenics war. And if they're pushing them closer together, you've got these two catastrophic events. Now, what I've actually read, and they confirmed it in dialogue from the very first episode of Strange New Worlds, that they're no longer separate events. The eugenics war is World War III.
Oh.
So that's why Khan was the age he is in 2022. So that in 2050, 10 years before First Contact, that's when World War III is. That is the eugenics war. So with this, I wouldn't say it's a retcon, because they talk about it as time ripples through the temporal wars. Are we in an alternate timeline? You know, how do we feel about it has altered our chronology of the future, this storytelling? So are we happy that this is all still as prime as it gets?
That's always happened, though. It's the butterfly effect, right? So throughout Star Trek, TOS, TNG, Voyager for sure, like whenever they do anything with, time travel related, for the most part, they're able to bring things back, but you can't exactly line it up exactly. So there's always going to be these ripple effects, and it's always going to spur off these sort of new timelines, even if it's very, very close to the original timeline. So for me, it works. I'm thrilled with it, actually. I think it's great because it, like the producers said, this is something that it makes the future still something that, is in the future, and it's not in our past. Like, saying these wars and stuff happened in the 90s. It's like, well, it didn't actually. So it just keeps Star Trek in the future. So I'm happy with it.
All right. So I wanted to ask, because this is a good relationship with T'Pol and Archer. And I was like, okay, how far did this relationship go? And Phlox asked T'Pol, have you shared your feelings with Archer? And she doesn't give an answer. And Archer even asks after he's hearing the stories, like, well, how far has our relationship progressed? She didn't answer. She just said it's more. So, what is your headcanon? Are they together? What is this departure shipping?
No, not for me.
Really?
I feel Enterprise took a U-turn around this point, because there was lots of kind of sprinkling suggestions in throughout season 1 and 2 that Archer is attracted to T'Pol, and maybe something could happen there. And it was just a little icky for me. And also as well, I'm coming at this as someone who loves Trip and T'Pol as a great Star Trek relationship. I love them. So a bit like, when anyone comes near Riker and Amy gets defensive, I'm very much on that hill.
Okay.
But specifically to answer your question, I don't think T'Pol would have taken it any further because of the vulnerability of Archer with his medical condition. It's a little bit taking advantage if
It's not logical.
it's not logical, it's not ethical. I think maybe Dr. Bashir probably would have had a go. But
Ooh.
he loves getting jiggy with his patients. But no, I think T'Pol would have maybe had a desire, a feeling, and she would have resisted and used all of her Vulcan logic to suppress it and resist. But maybe I feel there would have been an attraction over the years, but nothing more. And certainly just T'Pol fancies Archer. Archer doesn't know what day it is, literally.
Oh, Calvin was right as far as like the sprinkling up to this point of things that had happened. My head immediately went to that episode. Was it the Shadows of Perjem or something when I think she fell on top of him and her boobs went in his face?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, we talk about Code of Honor being cringy.
Yeah.
That moment for me is like, why would they write that? Even, I mean, this was the early aughts. Like, come on. Oh no, I'm sorry, my boobs are in your face. Hold on, let me stand up. Yeah, that was awful. But so my head went there. I never thought that it was good. It was always kind of cringy. Again, T'Pol also, T'Pol and Trip, they do work really well together. I'm a fan of that particular relationship. I like that it came out sort of organically. Yeah, I don't know. It always made more sense. So that's a down for me with the two of them. But in this episode with the alternate reality, I could see them getting close. She took care of him for years. They opened up to each other, told each other, things. So for this one-off episode, I think it was really sweet. And I could have seen it in this weird alternate reality, but not in the prime timeline.
Huh. Well, I will be the contrary voice to both of yours. I really wanted them to have this relationship because you're right. Season 1, I was like, oh, DePaul and Archer. And I'm glad they didn't go there in season 1. But now we're in season 3. They have this history and relationship. And I feel like it would be a very natural thing. And so in my headcanon, yeah, they are a relationship. And I am fine, like you said, Mark, if this just in the alternate reality that they did have that experience of a relationship, even if they don't remember it. So, yeah, not being able to create new memories. You guys, I cannot even imagine how you could live. And the fact that Archer is still trying to be captain, I mean, kudos to him. But what would you do? Like, literally, what would you do to keep yourself living?
I feel this episode did a really good job of the sympathetic nature of dementia, let's face it. When they had the conversations, they tried to maintain a little bit of normality by having Archer attend like morning breakfast and
The
that,
briefings.
the moment where he made a suggestion and they said, oh, we tried this a few weeks ago, it's working, thank you. But he was so despondent after that. And then it progressed to, you just go and have a little chat with the school kids. They find it entertaining. So the loss of self must have been devastating for Archer. In a traditional situation, he wouldn't have been on the ship. He would have taken himself away. So to see the world going on around him and him not being in his usual place would have been awful. But for the caretakers, at the end, thinking of T'Pol looking after him for all of those years, and every morning when he wakes up, walks into the room and she has to explain who she is, where they are, what's happened. And she says, I don't always tell it in such great detail because that must be exhausting for a carer. And it just got me thinking of people with Alzheimer's in a relationship and their spouse, you know, that awful, heartbreaking moment of where you're not recognized.
Mhm.
It makes my heart bleed. It really does. And again, Star Trek just did a great job of holding up that mirror to society with this story. So I applaud it.
Yeah, you're getting the perspective of the caregiver with T'Pol saying over and over, and you're getting the perspective of Archer where it's like, yeah, you're going to second guess everything that you do. Oh, I came up with this idea. Oh, it's been done 2 weeks ago. Like then it's like, do you even put forth anything? Why do you even have an effort? Cuz maybe you've done it before. Like that, and then the anger and the frustration, and he's like, well, you can say thank you, but I'm not going to remember. I mean, it was harsh what he said to her at that moment, but the truth, because he just doesn't remember. So brutal.
I liked the Margaret Mullen little thing they did. So they had how do I know this isn't a deception? How do I know you're not tricking me? So Archer's clearly told her a story. And he says, if I ever say that in the future, just say Margaret Mullen, which
Yeah.
got me thinking, what do we all have? Like, what would be your secret memory that you give to your caretaker to say, oh, actually,
Okay, I do
it
trust
is.
you. Yes.
Yeah. I think we'd have to think about that one. That's not really
Ooh.
something we could put out there.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd be sharing this on a podcast.
I know Amy's already. Irish Spring guy.
Oh, yeah. I haven't proposed to anybody called
That's
Margaret
it.
Mullen.
Amy already spilled the tea on that one.
Yeah.
So I thought about it from the perspective of, how disciplined the Vulcans are with their meditation practices and with logic and lack of emotions or suppressing of them. And so for her, I think it would have been an exercise, like a daily practice. And so I don't think that it would have been tedious for her to do to recount the story every day from her perspective as a Vulcan. I think that would have been the one person that could have done it every single day the rest of her life and not thought anything of it. It wouldn't have been
Interesting.
a deal to her.
I like that.
Yeah. It would have been like a meditation.
And as I was thinking about this caregiver, my mother was caregiver to my grandmother, who in the end passed away from Alzheimer's. And I still very distinctly remember the day when I went to visit grandma and she didn't recognize me. And I'm her favorite grandchild. Out of all 56, I'm her favorite. I mean, we all say that, but it was. But to have her not recognize me, and then, mom would explain to me, well, she gets angry and she has outbursts, but that's just the disease. And my mom's infinite patience with this, with grandma. I really don't know if I could do that. And I'm going to ask you, could you be a caregiver like that? And if you could, who do you think that you could have that infinite patience with?
It's hard. I mean, and I don't want to make light of the question.
Oh, poor James.
But I know, well, he would not be the name I'd mention because we get very frustrated with each other as it is, and there's nothing wrong with us. Last night, I was asked to dog sit for my best friend. So they dropped off the dog at our house, and then they went off on a night out. I do not have any patience at all. The dog, you couldn't even go to the bathroom without the dog yelping and crying because it's been left alone. And I just came back in the room and I just was so frustrated. Say, what do you want? Do you want food? Do you want to go out? Do you want food? And this was after an hour. So No, I would not. I would love to say I'd be a good caregiver, but I don't have the patience. I certainly don't have the Vulcan mental discipline. There'd be there'd be a lot of plexing going on to calm myself down, like Troy would do.
Yes.
But I can't answer the who would I be a caregiver question for, because the only person who's important in my life to that extent would be James, and kind of not only morally but legally, if anything was to happen to him medically, I would be his caregiver. But it's just one of those things, you just pray it doesn't happen to you,
Right.
or your partner.
I mean, and bless the workers who are in that industry. Like, people say being a teacher, no. Caregivers and hospice workers, they are cream
Nurses.
of the crop.
Yeah. I hear stories from my partner Andy, who's a nurse, and I mean, he tells me about, like, racist things getting yelled at him, people trying to fight him, wrestle him while he's at work, him getting punched or kicked or whatever, while he's just trying to give care to people that are, off their rockers, but they go in day in, day out, and they work long hours, some people, like, Andy will work, 15 plus hours a day, which is a lot. So I don't know, like, you definitely got to give respect to people that have that kind of job. Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah.
Thinking about, for me, like, who I would be able to be a caregiver for, I mean, I agree, like, with Calvin. It is one of those things where it's extremely hard to do, even with people that you love very dearly, to be able to have that amount of patience and whatnot. You were talking about your neighbor's dog, and I was like, oh, well, my dog. So I'd be able to take care of Murphy in whatever state he was in, and I know that, and be able to guide him through whatever needed to happen. But aside from my dog, I don't know about anybody else. Sorry, everybody else.
It's tough.
It's not for a lack of love,
No.
but it'd be much easier to take care of my dog than a fully grown human.
Agreed.
What about you, Amy?
Oh. I mean, it would have been my mother, but she's no longer with me. I could not take care of my father. I could, yeah, no. Siblings. I mean, and I'm not in a committed relationship, so yeah, I'm no. If something happens to you, you're on your own, guys. Sorry.
And I thought you were going to say Kelvin.
That's why she's coming over next week. I need looking after.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's get to some assimilations and regenerations. Listeners, if you're not familiar, which you should be by now, assimilations are things that we enjoyed, liked about the episode. Regenerations are those that we're going to send back and we just didn't care for. So I want to start off with an assimilation. I absolutely love Scott Bakula and Jolene Blaylock's chemistry together. How they interact and respond off of each other is truly beautiful. And I love seeing Jolene in regular hair length. I just can't stand the wig that she wears as to Paul, but she looked gorgeous. Just love the chemistry of them together.
I always see that chemistry, that relationship, like a brother-sister relationship. I don't see the romance, but even the final episode of Enterprise where, she grabs him and tidies up his dress uniform before he makes his Federation speech. It's that lovely. There's a love there, but it's not a romantic love. It's more of a familial
Platonic
connection. Yeah, and I agree. I think they've got fabulous chemistry throughout Enterprise, but particularly in this episode. I have a regeneration for the cold open. I love a cold open, whether it's a long one or a short one. but this one it often gets voted in a lot of polls as one of the best cold opens in Star Trek because it really builds. You've got great action scene. You've got that fantastic scene of Earth being destroyed by the Xindi weapon. And when the Russell Watson comes on to sing his song that everybody loves, it just leaves you wanting to know what the hell's next, what's going to go on. So there's so much action and sci-fi and questions in that cold open. I agree that I think it's one of the best in Star Trek.
Well, I love my assimilation is I love the reference to SETI Alpha 5. It was a great Space Seed / Wrath of Khan tie-in. Now, SETI Alpha 5, that isn't where Khan was, though, was he?
No, and it will be in the trivia if you want to read that right now. It's that one right there.
Oh.
Read it right
Okay.
now. It's fitting.
All right. I might as well.
Yes.
So we organically landed here. In selecting SETI Alpha 5 as the setting for this episode, Mike Sussman was influenced by the film Wrath of Khan. The choice of this planet as the location of the last human colony was something of a cruel joke on the part of Sussman. Even if the human survivors managed to escape the detection by the Xindi, their planet will be made uninhabitable in a little over 100 years, when the SETI Alpha 6 explodes, as explained in The Wrath of Khan. Oh, okay, that's right. Okay, that's why it's a little bit different. Okay. Makes sense now. Yeah. Thanks for that.
And I really liked the twist of when they removed the parasites. I mean, this great reset button. I mean, we all hate a reset button, but this one was creative. Like they removed it then or now, and it then removed it in the past so that we get a very fun, plausible reset button.
It was larger in the future than it was in the past.
Oh, I love that twist too. Don't even get me started.
So what have we got for regenerations then?
Okay, I have one. Well, I actually have two. I don't like how Trip, and is this true to his character, that when he goes to interrogate the Iridian to try and get the information and he like grabs him and he's like, I'm going to do whatever it takes mentality. Is that really Trip? I don't agree with that kind of interrogation style or what that is hinting at.
I mean, it was alternate reality.
Yeah.
He had seen some stuff, been through some life choices. He was a different Trip. So, no, it wasn't our Trip. It was a different Trip. But also, I've seen Archer do some questionable interrogations too in Enterprise, which again makes him like my least favorite captain. And not just for those moments, but it's also Scott Bakula's very wooden acting. Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, I think Mark's right. The arc for season 3 for Archer was that he arrived into the Delphic Expanse, this kind of blue-eyed explorer, and it roughed him up. And if you think what he did to the Illyrians when he stole their warp coil and left them stranded in Azati Prime and Damage, that just shows how far he would have gone in his desperation. So I bought it that Trip would rough someone up. And yeah, I think he probably would have done it anyway. Trip's a bit rough and ready.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And then my second regeneration, huge eye roll, the very last, and Archer's trying to make in the engine room, right? In engineering, and they're trying to set off the subspace thing to kill the parasites, and it's going to destroy the Enterprise. And the Xindi have boarded, and they shoot Archer, and Archer's last dying act is to reach up and push the lever up, and the camera is only on the hand. That's all you see. And it just, oh, I'm so sorry. That was way too dramatic. It just did not go sit well. I just eye rolled.
You've just broken the heart of the director of that episode, who probably thought that was a really cool shot.
Right. Mark.
Oh, this regeneration is perfect. Just give them some longer hair. Darn it. Darn you all the heck. So yeah, the aging of characters it's literally white shoe polish. They just put white shoe polish in their hair and maybe, change the hairstyle, but it looks the same. They didn't do anything else. They look the same. I mean, exactly the same. I don't know. Longer hair would help. Different wigs. I don't know. Some makeup, besides
Well,
just making
Malcolm
them
had
pale.
that terrible fake goatee.
Yeah. I don't know. There could have been more. So I have that as a regeneration, and I'll tack on one more regeneration, and that is the CGI of the Xindi weapon. Like Earth blowing up. Actually, I thought the CGI shot was really good for the time, but the Xindi weapon, even back in the day when it aired and I was watching it, I just always thought that some of the special effects were done better than others. And I never thought that like the Xindi weapon looked like a physical thing. It always looked like cheap CGI to me. So regenerate the CGI. I do like the planet exploding.
I love this Xindi weapon. I love that noise that it makes is very iconic, that high-pitched shrill, and hoping you can hear that as well. It's not just my tinnitus. But yeah, I just think it's quite iconic, the Xindi weapon noise. My regeneration is, I'm getting my feminist mode on here.
Sing it.
We
it.
finally got to Paul in a Starfleet uniform, and she looked amazing. She rocked it, looking as the captain of the Enterprise. Which just begs the question, why the hell was she not in a Starfleet uniform from the point in season 4 when she was made a Starfleet officer? Thank you, Rick Berman, for being your usual chauvinistic self.
Mm-hmm.
Give the women, get rid of the cat suits, give them the Starfleet uniforms. They all look so much better in them.
They do. They do.
When are we going to have a male actor in a cat suit? It's about time for some representation in Star Trek. We haven't seen that representation yet of a man being just shamelessly objectified in a skin tight. You can, see what religion he is, cat suit.
You can almost say TNG season 1 with her jumpers.
Okay.
Onesies.
Valid point.
Yeah.
I stand corrected.
Well, you guys, this episode has a bunch of interesting trivia as we learned about the Wrath of Khan with SETI Alpha 5 versus SETI Alpha 6. And interestingly enough, this story was originally pitched by Mike Sussman for Voyager as a Janeway and Chakotay story. Sussman says, quote, "It was my attempt at writing a love story for those two, but I couldn't sell the Voyager producers on the idea. It worked better as an Archer and T'Pol story anyway, with the background of the Xindi War upping the stakes." So would you have liked to have seen that with Chakotay and Janeway?
Yeah, I think the JC shippers out there's a strong desire for that relationship. I think it would have absolutely acknowledged that there was love there, and then you got that reset, and then it's more tragic because it never happened.
Yeah.
Whereas we are just all left suspecting that there was more. There was never any confirmation, either in Resolutions, the episode where they were on the planet together when they had the little disease, or even on Prodigy, even though she does shout, "I'm coming, Chakotay."
So Enterprise spearheading a ragtag fugitive fleet to a new home after the destruction of Earth was an homage by Mike Sussman to Battlestar Galactica. Sussman had read a bootlegged copy for the pilot script for the reimagined series prior to writing Twilight. And that's all I could think about when I saw that was
Oh.
just BSG and the fleet, and gave me all the feels. And I love the Ronald D. Moore tie-in to this. So actually, Ronald D. Moore kind of influenced this episode in a way, and that's just great. He gave us some great Trek.
Mm-hmm.
So we get some timeline confirmation in this episode as well. So a front page of the script explains the episode takes place in 4 different time periods. We have the present, which is October 2153. We have the very near future, which is April 2154, which is 6 months into the future. We have the near future, which is a year and a half in the future, or mid 2155. And finally, the future, 12 years, 2165, where everyone has long hair. So the slug line of each scene in the script includes the specified time. I bet the actors must have found that really confusing.
Right? And such interesting names. The present, very near future, the future. Like, okay, really? I, as a mathematician, just would have said time X, time Y, time Z. All right. And finally, Captain Archer's condition may have been inspired by the real life story of Henry Molaison. In 1953, in an attempt to cure him of epilepsy, Mr. Molaison had 2/3, and please excuse me as I butcher these parts of the brain. So 2/3 of his hippocampi, his parahippocampal cortices, the entorhinal cortices, piriform cortices, and amalgamae removed. Oh dear. From that point on, Molaison became unable to commit new facts to long-term memory. For each subsequent day until his death in 2008, people had to explain to him what day it was and what had happened since 1953.
That's so sad.
Yeah. True story.
Wow.
Wow.
I also feel quite bad that we left that one for you to read, Amy. that was a linguistic feat all in itself.
It was. So, final thoughts on Twilight as an alternate reality. Mark, let's start with you.
For Enterprise was one of those, like Deep Space Nine, that did a lot of long form storytelling, especially with the whole Xindi arc taking up a full season. There's definitely less opportunities for one-off like episodes, but this particular episode sort of bridged the gap between both, right? It was part of the longer form storytelling of the Xindi arc, but here is this one-off episode that you could pop on and kind of know what's going on. You know, I feel like, it's a good one-off episode. I like that they tried something different here. It was a unique way to storytell, with having Archer not being able to formulate the new memories. I don't remember seeing that before. Seeing what would have happened in alternate reality if T'Pol was in command. I don't know. I thought it was fun and interesting, thought-provoking. It definitely started a good discussion for us. So I was really glad to cover it.
I think there's something for everyone in this episode. You've got some really good character development, and you've got the pew 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 of all the space battles. We've got the everybody loves a bit of an alternate reality in the future. It's great, and you know it is in my top 3 episodes of Enterprise. So you could say I love it in the present day. I will love it in the very near future. I will love it in the future. So it's staying on my rewatch list. And you're right, Mark. It's just because Enterprise is acknowledged to get really good, season 3, season 4. It's a real good go-to rewatch episode in season 3 for the reasons you've just said. So maybe that's why I've seen it so many times, because it's not massively important in the whole arc of the Xindi storyline.
The episode that followed this one was it Lone Star or whatever that happened right after?
North Star.
North Star, yeah. But that was another one where they just sort of, and that wasn't, I don't even think they discussed the Xindi in that one at all. It was just a really one-off. And ironically, I'd watched that one, like a week or two ago? I'd seen that episode. And so then when I was looking for this one to do the watch, I was like, hey, I had just watched that other Enterprise episode.
Yeah, I agree with what both of you said. This is a great episode, and you're right. It does have everything. Yeah, those space battles and the special effects and the romance and the will they, won't they, and of course the time. I didn't get whiplash like I have with other shows where it's like, oh, now we're in the near future, the very near future. It seemed seamless as they were going through the story, and I was able to follow it completely. And again, I like that twist. It was lots of techno babble and just great. I really enjoyed Twilight. Well, Mark, what are we going to be talking about? I mean, you sort of teased it at the beginning, so tell our listeners again.
If they suffer from short-term memory loss,
there you go,
and have forgotten already what we were talking about at the start, I will remind you that next week we are going to begin a new series, really inspired by this episode. And the series is called Courtroom Series, and this is going to be part 1. And it's going to be Strange New Worlds episode Ad Astra per Asperia. And I'm very excited to discuss this. I mean, Amy, Kelvin, you guys are going to be off on a solo mission. So it will be Christos and I next week. But we will be, launching this new Courtroom series. And there's so many good Courtroom episodes in Trek. And it really, this episode got us all thinking that, we started reminiscing and remembering about all of the past Star Trek episodes with Courtroom episodes. And this is a really, really good one. So looking forward to the discussion.
Does DS9 have a good courtroom drama?
It does. Can I special shout out to Trexperts Quiz, because their episode this week was all about courtroom. And there was a statistic dropped in there by Davey saying that apparently there is a courtroom episode in every season of DS9, which obviously got my head spinning. And I can't think of one for season 3. But yes, there's loads. There's Dax in season 1. There's Rules of Engagement in season 4. There's Tribunal in season 2. I could go on. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of DS9 in this series, which I'm very happy about.
What shows are on BQN, you ask? Well, here's a rundown of some podcasts you might be interested in. All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast covering all of Trek, hosted by Amy, Mark, Christos, and Kelvin. Bargain Bin Gamer, a YouTube show hosted by Davey, a self-proclaimed gamer who specializes in reviewing and showcasing affordable video games. If you're lost in the Delta Quadrant, check out The Captain's Couch, a Star Trek Voyager podcast hosted by Jeremiah sitting on Janeway's Ready Room couch. Cinema Z, a film discussion and review podcast showcasing films you probably missed but should definitely check out, hosted by Mark, Matt, and Laz. Beam Aboard the Galaxy Class, a Star Trek Next Generation podcast covering all of TNG, hosted by Amy, Joe, Rhea, and Kevin. History with the Szilagys, a snippet of historical events from around the world, hosted by Chrissie and Jason. For the newest Trek coverage, check out Infinite Diversity, hosted by Chrissie and Thad. Test your Trek knowledge with Trexperts Quiz, a Star Trek quiz show hosted and written by Davey. Union Federation, covering all things Star Trek and the Orville, which we all know is really a Star Trek show, hosted by Kyle, Kevin, Amy, and Haley. Spill the Tea with What's the Tea, Bev, a Trek current events and fan interview show hosted by Christos. And for our Patreon members, we have the Hive Mind, BQN's monthly roundtable discussion with hosts and listeners. It's Green, a cornucopia of topics hosted by Mark. And Amy's Math Moments, a quick look at math moments in Star Trek, hosted by Amy. We know you have a choice of podcasts to choose from, and we thank you for listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio. We would love to hear what you thought of today's episode and hope you'll join our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, to continue our discussion there. You can also tweet your thoughts at AllGoodPod. Please follow the network on Twitter and Instagram at BQN Podcast. We've also partnered with our friends at the Fandom Podcast Network, where you can find us by searching their master feed. So, Mark, where can people find you when you are graciously and tenderly caring for Murphy till his last days?
Well, when I'm not doing that, people can find me in the BQN Collective Facebook page. They can find me, I guess, on Twitter at MarkWhite207. Hopefully I'm not there much longer. Anyway, and then you can also find me, if you become a patron of the network, on Patreon, where I host a show called It's Green. And I am one of the hosts of Cinema Z, that film discussion and review podcast, where we discuss all kinds of cool films that you may have missed, but should check out. And Kelvin, where can people find you when Trip Tucker is not helping you down at the warp core getting alien parasites removed from your brain while he's standing there, surprisingly, in his underwear?
Caked in decon chamber gel, I hope, as well, because that helps with the parasites, so I'm told. But when I'm not doing that, you can find me on Twitter or Instagram or Threads. Woo! At Kelvin's Timeline. But you can also find me on Facebook at the BQN Collective Facebook group page. And Amy, where can people find you after you've made a lovely home on SETI Alpha 5? Just
Aww.
8 years before it blows up.
Okay. Well, you can find me here on the network, where I'm co-hosting a couple shows, Union Federation and Galaxy Class. I am still on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, but my favorite place right there is the BQN Collective.
At this time, we would like to thank our associate producers, Mahendran Radhakrishnan and Tim Cooper. Special thanks to Graham Kelly for our opening and closing music, and to our very own Mark White for our beautiful artwork each and every week.
If you'd like to help us keep all of our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. We'll add you to the Hive Mind Facebook group. With a monthly subscription of $5 or more, you can join our meetings on the Hive Mind Roundtable discussion on the second Saturday of each month. Visit patreon.com/BQN to get all the details and watch your messages.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you'll join us as we search out
all good things. Shout out to the Moose Knuckle.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, Steven.
Now the question is that staying in, or is that getting edited?
No. I'm editing, so I know what I can say, because it will be gone.